Okay, today we're going to be doing a full review of the Dynafish Xiaonian, which I reckon right now is probably the most exciting super trainer on the market, even overshadowing the likes of the ASICS Mega Blast, with a fantastically low weight, beautiful ride, which I've never really felt before in a mileage shoe, and to top it all off, a ridiculously low price point as well, which I think will make this the king of super trainers on the current market. I'm going to run through this top to bottom today, chat about that price point, give a few comparisons to the outsole, Mega Blast, a few other shoes as well, and let you know exactly how good this shoe is and why, if you're looking to get into the Chinese market, this is probably the shoe to start with. Start off with some specs: 41mm of foam in the heel, 7mm drop down to the forefoot. This entire midsole is made up of TPEE, which feels somewhat similar to the Light Strike Pro that you get in the Adidas Adios Pro 4. Quite compressive, but with a nice gutsy rebound at the bottom. I would say it feels maybe a touch firmer than the Light Strike Pro in that race shoe, but it does still have that kind of characteristic meaty bounce, which a lot of us really love. No plates, no shanks, it's just a one-piece midsole. They do have these kind of holes drilled into the heel, these kind of support columns, which I think are meant to add a little bit of extra kind of stiffness in the heel. I didn't really notice them on the run. Interesting ideas there, but that is another feature to the midsole, I suppose. In terms of the weight, as I said, ridiculously light, 209 grams in my men's size 10 EU44, which means that it's lighter than most racing shoes still. So Adios Pro 4, Cloudboom Strike, Alpha Fly 3, it's lighter than all of those by 10-15 grams for my size, sitting at the same weight as a Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which is ridiculous for a mileage shoe with this much foam to it and this much protection. That obviously means that it overshadows the Mega Blast by about 30 grams. Evo SL it's got by about 35, I think, as well. So this is far and away the lightest mileage shoe that I've had with this level of protection anyway. In terms of the upper here, it's quite a simple construction, quite lightweight and stripped down, as you can imagine. Not a lot of structure through the heel counter, but we are getting a nice rim of padding through the ankle collar and around the back of the heel. The softness back here is appreciated. They haven't gone for anything too harsh. Tongue is nicely padded at the top with a bit of intentional cushioning. The rest of it transitions into this kind of neoprene style material, which is quite stretchy. They've actually done something which I think is a fantastic idea, which is extend the eyelet chain all the way down into the kind of middle of the toe box, which enables it to kind of expand out and open up a fair bit more, which was actually my main suggestion for the Danian 1, which is their racing shoe as well. That was extremely snug. It was probably one of the main problems with that shoe. Here, they've completely corrected that with this expandable kind of, rift in the upper all the way through. Fantastic stuff. The mesh itself is a pretty firm, like nylon mesh, I think. Not too sure. It's very breathable. It's quite firm. It doesn't stretch at all, but it is very flexible and does provide a pretty good lockdown when you use all of those eyelets right down the foot. One complaint I would have is with the laces. They may be a little bit long, a little bit cheap feeling. They don't exactly give the most adjustable fit. One big upgrade I would suggest would be serrated laces here, enabling you to kind of fiddle with the fit and have it stay the same over the course of the run. I found with this shoe, I would adjust the fit, and then over the course of the run, it would kind of progress back to a kind of equilibrium that it always reached, where I couldn't really adjust the forefoot separately from the ankle collar, which was just a little bit frustrating. Not a big problem overall, it's still locked down well, but it would be nice just to have a little bit more tweaks to it, which I think could be given with serrated laces. In terms of the fit, as I mentioned, with the kind of expandable slit down the middle, you do have a bit more room in the forefoot. I would suggest that this is one of the roomier fits on the Western market as well. Quite a nice rounded shape through the toe box, reasonably high volume. I would suggest wider foot friendly if you get the right size. For myself, EU44, I kind of float between 10, 10.5 US. Here, I've gone for the 44, and I've got plenty of room ahead of the toes, full thumbnail, which is what I like to see. Overall, for me, this upper feels well executed. It does a really good job of balancing some comfort elements, but also a reasonable fit and keeping things very lightweight. I think this is far superior to the likes of the Evo SL, which is a bit baggy and bloated, and the Mega Blast, which is nasty and cheap and narrow. This does feel like a premium quality upper on a shoe which is reasonably cheap. Moving down to the midsole, this TPEE foam in this construction is probably the most beautiful daily training ride that I've experienced. And honestly, it's not really that close. It is a fantastically protective, comfortable, smooth running experience without any extra weight, which just makes things feel so seamless and easy to turn over. This is the kind of shoe that I chuck on and I have to keep on checking down because I'm running 10, 15 seconds faster than I expect to. It's just so efficient without you even really knowing about it. That's probably one of the main things I'll say about this shoe. It doesn't grab your attention like the Mega Blast or the Super Blast, even the Evo SL to some extent. It's not in your face with big rockers or massive rebounds. It's just smooth and silent and seamless, and it kind of goes about its business in a kind of subtle way, which I've really, really appreciated. It doesn't beat the legs up. It keeps things very easy going, but it also has a kind of sneaky pace to it where I feel like it is quite easy to roll into tempo, getting up into threshold. Marathon pace reps, I think this can handle, and it does it all with ease without really changing the way that it responds. The TPEE foam doesn't bottom out, it doesn't overcompress. It feels just as good at the start of a long run as it does at the end after an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. It really is just that perfect all-rounder. I will say the kind of softness of the foam, the rocker geometry maybe doesn't feel perfect when you're trying to really rip intervals, so this probably isn't the shoe that you're going to want to take out for those real hard, fast sessions, but as a reasonable all-rounder, as a suitcase shoe, something that could handle a decent session, a great long run, fantastic daily training, this is pretty much it in my opinion. Super smooth, super protective. It keeps the legs feeling fresh as well. I pull up really well after every run that I do in this shoe. It's not kind of adding any extra workload where I'm not really noticing it. I've had that in a few different shoes where I feel really good during the run, but when I pull up the next day, I notice that I was maybe using my calves a bit more or pushing through the glutes a little bit extra. Here, there's no kind of hidden nasties. It is just simple and effective, and I absolutely love it. In terms of the stability of this shoe, I would say it's decent. I wouldn't say it's amazing. It's not going to completely control the way that you run. Obviously, with the weight savings in the upper, it's not super structured back there. And with the level of compression that you're getting from the foam, there does have to be a bit of trade-offs eventually. You're not going to be able to have a foam which is compressing and bouncing back and, you know, feels quite fun underfoot and also have a really stiff structured ride. Mega Blast is probably the one for you if you want something which is a bit more stiff and controlling. This is a little bit more fluid and it might not hold you on top of the midsole as tightly as some of those other models out there. If you have stability issues, maybe not. If you're someone who's just wary that some shoes are a little bit too much, I think you could probably get away with this one. For the rest of us, I think it's going to be just fine. In terms of pace versatility, as I mentioned before, I think it is pretty decent. I think you can push into kind of threshold zones, half marathon pace pretty comfortably. It just has that really easy to turn over feel where you feel like you can spend a little bit more time in the air, pick your feet up a bit easier, get them a bit higher off the ground, and it all just comes together in a perfectly smooth package. Absolutely adore this shoe. I reckon this is shoe of the year for me right now. I'm calling it early. This is just beautiful, fantastic stuff. On the outsole, we have a full coverage CPU rubber. I guess a little bit of a channel in the middle there, but pretty much full coverage. So far, the grip has been decent on smooth paths, clean paths. Dry surfaces have been great, no real worries there. Problem I have found is that as soon as I move into kind of sandier territory or a little bit of dirt, there isn't a lot of purchase to the lugs here. They're very, very shallow, probably 1 mil, even less. It is a very light on outsole, which is obviously meant for weight saving. It does kind of contribute to that softer landing. You're not getting this kind of clunk of rubber. So I think that is part of the magic, but there is that sacrifice when it comes to purchase on off-road surfaces. If you're thinking about mixed terrain, maybe this could be something to kind of push you away, but for myself, I'll cop a little bit of a slip every so often if it means that I get this running experience underfoot. Durability, I think, is going to be good. CPU has a good reputation. So far, 65 Ks in, I'm not actually seeing any change to the rubber patterning at all, despite the fact that I have taken it on some gravel roads and given a fairly good test. I think so far we're expecting pretty big Ks from this, what with the reputation of TPEE as well. I'm thinking 600, 700 Ks before we start to see anything really serious going on. In terms of the price point here in Australia, the way that I've accessed this was through Taobao. I managed to pick this up for $150. When I managed to find my size, it's been pretty light on lately. I think these have been extremely popular, which makes sense. But if you can find it, $150 is just ridiculous. That's more than half the price of the Mega Blast, which is $340 here, going up to $360 next year for absolutely no reason at all. That makes me furious. completely overpriced for what it's offering compared to this. It's also $90 cheaper than the Evo SL, which you could find on sale, but the difference in performance, I think, makes this still far, far better value in terms of performance to price. Really is just the best buy on the daily training market right now. Just, yeah, insane. Don't really need to say much more. 150 bucks if you can find it. Insane. As of right now, if you're watching this video as it's released, there is a few size 45s on Taobao. I'll try and put the link in the description. Try and grab them. I think things will restock, and I imagine eventually it will go over to AliExpress, which should be a bit easier for a lot of you. But honestly, if you're ever going to find a time to get on Taobao, do the auto translating and everything else, now is the time. This is the perfect daily trainer. Coming around to some comparisons, I've got a few shoes here which I've mentioned a little bit throughout this review. First is the Asics Mega Blast, which I am admittedly a massive fan of, even if it is overpriced, and I'm not a huge fan of the way that Asics are going about it. Punchy midsole, really stable, much firmer foam underfoot, less rock ring to it, more of a kind of late stage toe off. I think it relies a little bit more on the punch of the aliphatic TPU foam. This is definitely smoother. It feels more comfortable at daily training paces and recovery zones. I think where things get a bit more balanced is when you're kind of stepping into that zone 3 long run kind of situation where you're really trying to step on the gas a little bit, get rolling. I think that's where these shoes feel a little bit more equal. To me, the kind of difference would just be in preference. Do you prefer something which is a bit smoother, a bit kinder to the legs, or something which is a bit more aggressive, a bit more poppy, and does feel a little bit more explosive underfoot? I think the result is pretty much the same. You do get that kind of extra hand getting through the late stages of the long run, but it's just a bit of a different approach. I would admit that I do sometimes prefer the feel of this if I'm feeling really fresh, but as soon as I start to feel a bit beaten up, the Xiaonian is all over the Mega Blast, just more comfortable in the upper as well. That's something I've noticed. When I first tried the Mega Blast on, I didn't really think about the upper at all because the midsole was so fantastic, but now that I've actually got an option that competes with it in the midsole, it really is apparent how kind of cheap and narrow this fit is. So for me, $150, absolute no-brainer, but there will be people who prefer the Mega Blast over this shoe still, with a little bit more of a stable platform, I would say, bit of a firmer, gutsier rebound, and maybe a bit more of a late-stage rocker, which could appeal to some, plus a little bit of a better outsole tread, which might get a bit more bite on some off-road surfaces. The Evo SL is probably the most similar shoe to the Xiaonian on paper in terms of the stack heights, the TPEE foam, simple construction. I do think there is similarities in terms of the kind of depth of cushion, that TPEE response, that kind of meaty rebound, which a lot of people will enjoy. The foam here is definitely a touch firmer, a little bit more structured, but somehow this does still end up coming out a bit more stable. I think it comes down to this midfoot cutout and also a bit of a sloppy upper on the Evo SL. It does feel a little bit half-hearted in terms of the structure that they've got through the midfoot, and a lot of people do have issues kind of collapsing off the shoe because of that sloppy hold. This feels a bit more intentional, a bit more planned out, and I think it comes together a little bit more controlled. Definitely lighter, more airy. This feels a bit more gutsy and resilient. The beveling through the heel is another feature which I didn't really notice initially when trying this shoe, but again, once you actually get a shoe which can compete with it and might be able to do it a little bit better, you do notice a few extra things. Here, the beveling starts all the way back and then transitions into the midfoot, and then you don't really have anywhere which is flat on this shoe. It just kind of smooths out right into the rocker off the toe, whereas here you do have a pretty flat landing, very, very half-hearted but bevel back here, and then you get into the kind of rocker through the midfoot, and that does transition you through nice enough. I would say you have to be doing a midfoot strike to really get over that bevel in the Evo SL. For the Xiaonian, it doesn't really matter how you strike, you're going to get onto that rocker and get transitioned through no matter where you land. So that's probably a key advantage here. I would say this is a bit friendlier to heel strikers, but that's not to say that the Evo SL isn't a smooth shoe and can't work for heel strikers either. I just think this is a little bit better suited in geometry. In terms of the pace ranges that I prefer them for, I do think this feels better at daily training paces, just a bit softer, a bit friendlier. Long runs, the lightness probably pulls it through, but there is something that is still quite nice about the gutsy, kind of firmer feel of the Evo SL. I would suggest maybe pushing up into kind of tempo and threshold zones. There's probably a day of the week where I might prefer this over the Xiaonian, just in terms of sensation underfoot. Having something which is a little bit firmer and a little bit more direct might mean that I'll lean towards the Evo SL, but overall, this is a better shoe and it is a better price point. So yeah, for most people, I would recommend the Xiaonian. Final comparison is to the Xiaodan Lei Plaid, which is a dual density carbon plated training shoe. Top layer of TPEE foam, which is A little bit softer than the Xiaonian. It's almost like an Incredi Run foam from Saucony. Very, very compressive. Underneath a very firm supercritical EVA with a carbon plate running through the center to give it a bit of extra structure. The rock ring off the front is quite similar. That's kind of the main thing that's drawing me to this. But other than that, it does come across as a more kind of dense, kind of gutsy ride, whereas this is a little bit airier, a little bit smoother, and definitely a lot more rocket and efficient in its feel, whereas this is a bit more abrupt in its landing. It also has a bit more of a kind of pitched feeling with the softness of the foam and the way that the bottom layer of supercritical EVA acts. It makes you feel like you plunge into the forefoot while your heel stays up quite high, which means that it feels like you're being kind of pitched forward rather than kind of being rolled and drawn through this stride, which I do prefer in the Xiaonian. Maybe this is a little bit more stable, definitely a lot stiffer in the heel counter, bit of a plastic cup going back there, bit more surface area underfoot. The extra stiffness of the carbon plate, you could argue, stabilizes it a little bit more. That's probably the main advantage, but other than that, Xiaonian is all over it in terms of light, airy, smooth performance. I would go for this one at around about the same price. So yeah, bringing this all together, the Dynafish Xiaonian has absolutely blown me away. Fantastic daily trainer, easily the best that I've worn this year. Probably the best shoe that I've worn ever in this daily training all-rounder kind of space. If I had to use one mileage shoe for the rest of my life, this would probably be it. It's just brilliant. Super light, super smooth, super bouncy, just super effective as well. The fact that a brand can come out and hit this on the head straight away is ridiculous. Makes you wonder what all these Western brands are doing, just mucking around with small iterations here and there rather than just going straight for the kill and giving people the best shoe possible. Absolutely brilliant stuff. I'm actually so excited to see what they have next. Update to the Danian maybe, another training shoe. Just whatever they do, I'm going to be excited about it. This is fantastic stuff.